at Harness Data Intelligence. So you've got a very good title, Josue, and you talk about how data is changing the commercial property landscape.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, thank you very much, Simon, for the opportunity. I think that speaking here is a very exciting opportunity for me because, among other things, I don't get to do this very often. You know, I have a pretty technical profile in my organization. Normally, I'm locked into the room there with my algorithms and data and all that stuff. So this is not the kind of thing that I normally do. But what we are going to discuss today, connecting data for the property industry, is something that I do feel very passionate about. And I think that it makes a massive difference. And I would like to share with you not just what we have done, but also what we have learned in the process of doing that. So let me introduce ourselves. We are Harness Data Intelligence. This is the organization. And my name is Josue Calvo, already introduced by Simon. And I am here also with the founder of the organization, Ben Main, that is here seated in the front row. So cutting to the chase, straight to what we have done. What is this thing that we have done? Well, we have created a data platform that is designed to connect data. So what we have managed to do with this technology is what we believe is the most connected data set in the UK property market. A data set that includes more than 20 different data sources coming from more than 20 different data organizations, pretty much covering the basic aspects of the property market, since, well, starting with the gazetteer, the basic gazetteer of addresses, commercial properties and characteristics coming from VOA, land registry titles, super important. These guys seem to like publishing their data in different segments that don't have much connection, but we have managed to do something very interesting with that. Companies' house data to know all the information about organizations, not just the companies, where they are, but also who are the persons with significant control, the appointed directors, EPC, domestic, non-domestic, including also Scotland. So pretty much we have created what we call a base layer of what is the fundamentals for the property market in the UK. So if you know the UK market, you could say, well, very good, but none of this is groundbreaking. What have you done? All this data is publicly available. So what is the big fuss about this platform? Well, the big fuss about this platform is that all the data is connected. This is the key bit. So from the user experience perspective, I think that what we have done is something very significant. To illustrate, I would compare Data Fabric as a data platform with other data warehouses, appliances that are out there, which are fantastic, great pieces of technology. But I would compare that with the experience of when people used to download music from these peer-to-peer networks, such as the Pirate Bay, Kazaa, or Napster, or those sites. What was the user experience? I'm not getting into the legality of doing this or not. So the user experience was not very optimal, to be honest. Someone has to first search for the file, download the file, open it, is it a virus? Then you play the music. The quality is not that good. Let's search for another one. And then what do you do once you have the data downloaded? Do you create a collection yourself? You have to have a bigger hard drive to start piling up all this music. So no, it wasn't a good experience at all. On the other hand, when streaming services appeared in the market, such as Spotify, the experience changed completely, because the only thing that you had to do was just looking for the artist, looking for the track that you wanted to listen to, or for the album, and boom, you had it there, right there. The sensation was you had it instantly. We know that they had tops 200 milliseconds to make believe the brain that this was an instant experience. So in that aspect, we believe that Data Fabric is pretty much like that, because different to these data warehouses, appliances that probably come with a data marketplace that you download the data or upload your own data, Then you have to start cleaning the data, connecting the data, and making sure that the data is ready to be used by your systems. On the other hand, the data that is in Data Fabric is all ready to go. You look for any location, for any address in the UK, and immediately you see all the data related to that particular place. You see what are the transactions that have happened in there. You see who are the owners, because you see the land registry titles. You can see characteristics of the properties, because you see the EPC certificates that tell you about the size, about how old is the building, and so on and so forth. If it's a commercial property in there, because it appears in VOA. So it's there, ready to use. So that in itself makes a big difference, because how many people do you have to dedicate in your organization to do all this donkey work? You just have to get 2, 3 software engineers to build all the processes and to run them regularly to get the data ingested. How expensive is that? Data Fabric removes the necessity of doing that, so you can actually move that talent into doing something that is actually beneficial and adds value for your business. Oh, sorry, I just went back. So all the data sources that we were talking about before actually weren't easy to connect between them, because the only common data point that they have is the address in most of their cases. And connecting addresses is not something trivial, because we know addresses is something that is written for human beings, for the postman to be ready to understand where you have to deliver the address. But the address can be written in different ways, the location of the place, postcodes, and so on and so forth. So the problem was getting into address match all these addresses, so we can determine exactly where all these addresses were, and we could connect all the data sets. And yet again, if you know the UK market, you could say, well, actually, that is not that hard. That is not big news, because in the UK, you have the UPRNs, which are the unique property reference numbers that have been advertised by the government as some sort of social security number of every addressable object in the country. And there are many data sources that come with it, and there are many companies that publish the data sources with those numbers. So if you have those numbers, what is the big fuss about connecting all these data sets if you have the UPRNs? Well, what I'm going to say now is highly controversial, and that is the reason because in the coming minutes, I will have to get my hands dirty into the data. So I hope that I can make sense of what I'm going to try to explain later on. But if what I am saying somehow resonates with you, please don't hesitate in contacting me or contacting me later on, because I'll be more than happy in giving you more detail of what I'm about to say. So essentially, what we discovered in our journey of connecting all this data is that actually trying to jump straight into UPRNs to connect address data is a big part of the problem. It reduces significantly how efficient you can be about connecting data. So this is highly controversial. As I said, I'll try to prove what I just said using data. So let's take an example, and we are going to look into a building that is pretty well known, which is the Shard, the tallest building in London, tallest building probably in Europe. So when you look into the Shard and you try to find what is the data that is there about UPRNs, there are 93 records that you can find in the main UPRN repository, which is address-based premium. So that, for starters, starts sounding a little thin, because we know that the Shard is a building that has 80-something floors and it's a massive office building. How on earth are you going to define every single addressable object in the Shard with just 93 records? There is another problem with UPRNs, and the devil is in the detail. You see, the 3 records that are there on the top are the ones that define the building as a whole. Those are one UPRN that defines the whole Shard. And then you see all the other records that are supposed to be identifying every internal element of the Shard. The problem is, you don't have one UPRN. You have two UPRNs. You have UPRN and parent UPRN. So what is the deal? The parent UPRN is the one that groups everything into the building. Not quite so, because UPRNs and parent UPRNs are a hierarchy. And from this data set, that is the one that we have in production right now in Data Fabric, that could keep going on up to 5 levels. So if you have a data guy in your organization and you show him that he has to find recursively all the way up all the records that are related to that, well, probably when he's writing the query, he's going to parse in many other languages. So that is not something easy to do. And well, he would have to go up all the hierarchy and probably also go down all the hierarchy, which could involve literally hundreds of UPRNs. So that makes a problem to connect data using UPRNs. But also there is another problem, and it's the lack of consistency in the data sets that you get in there. So you can see in this sub-building column, actually it's not called sub-building, it's called secondary addressable object. But to simplify, you see that you have level 33, but not as a number. It says level 33, more like some sort of description. And that is mixed up with company names. And then below that, you have restaurant level 32, restaurant levels 31 and 33. So, to be honest, as a data architect, to iterate, if my team could build a database with such disparity of data and structured data actually in that column, I would not be happy. And that makes address matching very complicated. I have a couple of examples, this one and this other one, that I'm going to leave them in the slides so you can look into more detail if you are interested in this. And the problem is that when you try to address match those addresses that actually are coming from land registry titles for actually properties that have been transacted, that people have paid for them, so we know that these properties exist, the data that you find in the UPRN repository is contradictory. So you could not actually match it against UPRN. So, why we believe this whole mess is happening? Well, we believe that this whole mess happens because UPRNs, I would call them a made-up identifier. Why a made-up identifier? Well, because the people that produces UPRNs, their core business is not producing those UPRNs. Most of the cases are local authorities, are councils, and their business is collecting taxes, but they react to the appearance of new properties. So for the residential sector, it's not all that bad, but when it comes to commercial sector, there are lots of things that don't pass through the guys that have to assign the UPRNs, and there are tons of data that get missed, and these guys have to keep reacting to all those changes. So, to make a long story short, this is just too much data to be handled by people. This is just data that changes too quickly to be able to do it efficiently. So, in that one, I totally concur with Agent Smith here. Never send a human to do a machine's job. If you have to keep and maintain such a large data set and do it consistently, that is rather a job that has to be automated. We bumped into this problem back in 2018 when we were more focused in valuation in the commercial real estate, and we realized that actually there were tons of addresses, particularly in that space, that were missing from address-based premium. So we were kind of desperate because if you know, in the UK, in the commercial real estate, the amount of data that you have could be about 20 times less than the one that you have in the residential space. And the problem is, if out of that thin amount of data that you get, you are already losing probably around 30 or 40% that could not be found in UPRNs, imagine, you are practically flying blind. You cannot see what is going on. So we had an idea. we decided to top up what was in address-based premium with all the other available data sets. But hold a second. How are you going to do that? How could you top up what is in there if you don't have UPRNs, if there are no identities? How are you going to create those additional records? Well, we decided definitely not to go back and try to replicate what the councils and these public organizations were doing. And the idea that we had could be illustrated with this painting that I like very much from Marguerite. Ceci n'est pas un pipe. So, excuse my French, because I definitely do not speak that language, but pretty much what this means is, this is not a pipe. This is clearly the painting of a pipe, but I cannot grab it and start smoking. So I think that this illustrates very clearly what is the point. An address is not a property. An address is a pointer to the property. And depending on the property, some properties could have different addresses because they are facing different buildings, and they can be written in different ways. So based on that, what we decided to do is not creating a code based on the properties, but rather creating the code based on the addresses. The addresses we knew what were there. We could clearly see them, so we decided to create that. And we call them HPIDs, Harness Position ID. So that is not a position in the geo sense of that. That is a position, a conceptual position to have a key that we can put in the database. And then, to make it work, really, what we have to do is pretty much split conceptually the address in two. One would be the external part of the address, and the other would be the internal part of the address. So what would be the external part of the address? Well, the address that is left once you strip out every internal element, like the flat, like the floor number, and so on. So we kept the building name, a start and end number of the street, and the identifier of the street, which is, in the United Kingdom, is the USRN. And then, having that, what we did is allowing the machine to do its job, allowing the data to tell us what is the property. That is what we call late entity resolution. So by grouping the data by this normalized form of addresses, the data itself would allow us to identify what were the properties. And that is what makes a massive difference. So when you take the addresses that match this definition of the address of the shard, and you grab them by this identity that can be found in some of the records, then you can find that there are also another 7 different ways of writing the address of the shard that all of them contain the same kind of coordinates. And in that way, you are allowing the data to tell you what is the property. So that is beautiful. We don't have to model anything. We don't have to come up with strange algorithms to understand what is a property. We let the data speak by itself. And then, to complete the story, we decided to go also with the internal part of the addresses. And that makes a huge difference. And let me try to see if I can put this properly. So what we did is, now with the remaining part of the address string, we semantically processed it and extracted the atomic elements of the address, of the internals of the address. So you can see in here, for this address, that we have there the organization name, Hatton, we have the level, 33, we have the unit, unit 5, as that was the address that is up there. So instead of having that as a definition, this is what happens in the UPRN database, what we did is structuring that. So we also created an internal HPID, but what we do with it is not just trying to group everything that is under that internal HPID. We use it to look up the different elements so we can, inside of every building, be able to match the elements by the atomic elements that there are. So in that way, you have a resolution and a granularity of what is inside of a building that is completely impossible to have with UPRNs. So this is, in essence, the story of how we have managed to put together this amazing data. The results, I think, that are really outstanding. Our address matching capability is well above the 90%, particularly outstanding when you look into the commercial data sets, when in commercial data sets you can get address matching capabilities of 70%, 60%. So there is a massive difference. 30% of the data that you cannot access because you cannot address match it, what would you do with an extra 30% of information? That is also something extremely valuable. When you compare what ABP has to offer you about UPRNs, 93 records, versus the more than 10,000 records that we have managed to assign to the shard, well, it makes a massive difference. And we are not talking about a small building there in the middle of nowhere. We are talking about the most well-known skyscraper in Europe. And also, when it comes to connecting, Data Fabric shows that there are, among other things, I think the most outstanding thing here is that land registry titles and land registry title entries, 121, 43 records about ownership. So imagine that you are taking, you want to know who owns the shard. There are actually 43 records telling you exactly who owns that. But if you try to connect that data with UPRNs, you are going to get 0. So there is a big opportunity there because we see that in the UK, companies are using a suboptimal way of connecting data. So definitely using Data Fabric presents an opportunity to have better data, better connected. We have achieved with this technology to gather, for instance, more than 20 million records of price per square meter because we have managed to match the sizes and the prices of the transactions. Considering that there are only 22 million sizes and 26 million transactions, finding an overlap of 20 million, I think that is pretty outstanding. Also, I would mention this very quickly, but I believe we have the best land registry data outside of land registry. They, as was mentioned before, they publish the data in small chunks. Among other things, they publish the land registry transactions for capital transactions, about 26 million of them. We have managed to identify 91% of the transactions to what land registry title they belong. They don't publish that information, but we have managed with this matching capability to be able to do that. And one feature that I am particularly fond of is the company connections. As we have ingested also companies' data, who owns the company, who are the directors, what are the addresses where those companies are and where everybody is registered, we have created this capability that is, you point to a company and it can crawl all the network of the company and finally show you everything that is related to that company. So you end up having this sort of network. In the middle is the red one is the central company, then all the companies that are related to that one, and so on and so forth. Using this algorithm, we created a report for the Evening Standard that pretty much was revealing the size of hidden ownership of Russian oligarchs in the UK. And it turned out to be that it was 10 times more than the ones that is shown in the official records. We are very proud to say that we have even recently, 2 days ago, been quoted by Vanity Fair in France about that report that we created. So this technology, and this is also something very important, is not only for addresses, it's also for company names, to identify persons' names. So this late entity resolution, I think that is really something outstanding that if you use, I'm pretty sure that is going to enhance the capabilities of your company. And I think that this is a great audience to tell this message because you do understand the power of data. So this capability that we have also created also has a very interesting thing. As this is not bound to an identifier in the United Kingdom, we can deploy this to any territory. So if you're interested in this, talk to us. We will be more than happy in partnering up with someone that is interested in getting this into other territory. So thank you very much, and this is everything that I got for you.
Great, thank you very much. Now wait. Oh. You get to ask questions around this. Now I'm getting a better idea of exactly what you guys do. A couple of questions. Is the process completely automatic, or do you use some sort of manual moderation?
No, it's completely automatic. So, and this is one of the great things. This process actually is a methodology that you can use to harmonize data sets. It doesn't matter. So we are doing now in the property market that we have seen also that you can do it with companies. It's completely automated. So no human intervention. And I also have to say, I sleep very well to know that I am not modeling something that could be pretty much giving the wrong results because I am changing things. As this comes automatically, I have a very clear conscience.
Now, it's not up here, but a lot of data is not in a database. It's in PDFs, it's in a whole bunch of non-structured form. How do you handle that problem?
Oh, well, that is a very interesting question. We have another product called PDFX that, whose purpose is extracting and converting unstructured data into structure. And we have tackled the most difficult one, which are PDFs. What we are going to do with Data Fabric is using the content of PDF to also add to this base layer. And we will offer the possibility of clients using their own documents to enrich the layer of data that we have put together.
Okay. Now, how interested are the UK governments or portals or other players in the UK to access this data?
Well, I think that pretty much. We are working with a university, with the London School of Economics, and these guys are working pretty much for the taxman. And, well, we are working very close to them. We also are having conversations with Companies House, because essentially there is a big problem in the UK registering the companies and checking that the data that has been registered actually is working. I saw not too long ago a hairdressing salon that was set up in number 10 of Downing Street. So I think that there was some sort of conflict in the addressing there. So these guys want to use our technology, and we are in conversation with them to check the accuracy of the data that they are ingesting.
Now, a lot of this seems to be in commercial data. Does it also cover residential?
Yes, it does.
So it's just all property in the UK?
All property in the UK, absolutely.
Okay. Fantastic presentation, very detailed. Now I can no, I don't understand it, to be honest. But what I do understand is that there's a highly complex process, but if you get it right, the data and the insights you can capture and you can present become truly valuable.
Absolutely.
So fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
Simon. Thank you.